We create our emotional body out of all these thoughts. They all have a different resonance. You can imagine a tuning fork. You hit a tuning fork, any tuning fork of the same frequency will vibrate. It's the same thing with every single thought you have. So when I have a thought of a certain kind, my emotional body will shimmer with that energy. If that thought persists for a long period of time, then that energy starts to develop in us and starts to affect everything. I don't know if any of you people are aware of the holographic concept. So the idea of a holograph is that if I take a glass and break it, every piece of glass is the same as every other piece. It can reflect everything. So when you have a thought, I like this, that thought is not nothing. That thought is energy. So when you have a thought, that thought resonates through every single thought you have in your awareness. Every single one. And any thoughts you have that is of a similar type to that thought will start to resonate. So if I start to get feeling angry, all the thoughts that I've had that have any association with that particular vibration will go off. And that happens every time. There's no way to avoid that. You have a thought, it will manifest a vibration. So the whole point for me for the twin powers is to realize and start to use your thinking mind to understand how your mind creates thought. So we have a perception. Perception is input. I see things, I hear things, I smell things. We also have perceptions at the non-rational level. Your thoughts are all feeding over all of us. If I'm tuned into it, I can hear your thoughts. And that's how telepathy works. Energy is manifested and it radiates. Okay? So whenever we have this house going, we have a thought, it affects everything. And it starts to create connections between other thoughts. So a thought of I think about this chair. This chair has shape, has color, has size, has texture. I recognize that chair, and I can recognize other things that are similar to that chair because they have properties the same. I'm assuming most people have kids. Do you ever hear a child pick up a jug of something when they're young, and they want to look at the bottom, and they turn it over, and the water falls out? They pour it on the floor? Do you ever see that happen? Okay. The reason that happens is the child has not yet understood the concept of a container. Right? He understands that it's something. He doesn't understand the relationship between the object and what's inside it. That's what we learn gradually over time. We eventually realize that you can't tip it because it's going to pour out. Okay? So by the time we're adults, all these different thoughts are creating a web of interconnectivity. So for instance, a belief that you have, if you believe that people are basically decent, that belief had to come from your experiences. It was reinforced by what you observed and how you reacted to it. So we have a perception. That perception goes into our mind. Our mind starts to interpret that and says, this is this, I don't like this, whatever. The mind interprets that, and it integrates that experience. When you're a child, those experiences create new virtual thoughts. Every single experience you have creates a thought. Whether that thought persists or not depends on how much energy is put into the thought. Like an emotional reaction, a strong emotional reaction will reinforce a thought. Also, repetition. That's why you practice things, because repetition strengthens a thought. So by the time we're 40, 50 years old, we've got this big pool of often conflicting beliefs. And a good example of a conflicting belief is in the Christian religion. Every religion, there's only one truth, right? We all have the same truths, but every religion has a lens that it observes a truth through. Christians are told, and I'm not talking about every Christian, but people who are taught dogmatically, they're told that God had a son, right? Okay? That separates God from man. Now, when you want to try to develop your intuitive and your other skills, you have to work against the belief that you're separate from God, and we attribute those qualities to God. So we're going to fight ourselves to try to develop that quality. And that's why when you're older, if you don't have the gift, it's hard to get it. If you can imagine a bunch of walls and you're trying to see through them, everything's blocking you, right? And while it's possible to imagine yourself to be intuitive and telepathic, usually you have to retrain your mind. Okay? Now when it comes to the mind, there are two fundamental things about the mind and about our relationship with it. Number one is our honesty level, and number two is our level of personal responsibility. So we've got this tangle of thoughts going on now, right? We all have emotional reactions to things, we feel certain ways. We don't know where it comes from all the time, but we feel it, and we may react to it. So if we want to fix that and modify that and start to develop our awareness and become more in balance in life, the two fundamental things you have to have, I don't care what school of thought you're at, what team you're trying to understand, you need to be honest. And honesty means ruthlessly honest. I heard the lady 2 speakers ago talk about intuitive thought comes in, and we block it. We don't see it, right? What she's referring to is something that a friend of mine penned as the rational mind editor. So, when we have a thought in our mind, we perceive something and we react to it. That happens at the non-conscious level. It hasn't quite reached our conscious mind yet, right? So the mind is pre-processing all the input we receive, okay? Because we're not transparent. An intuitive thought comes straight out. There's no blockage to it. So those people who have that gift don't think about it. They have the thought, they know it. But when that becomes blocked, the honesty is what keeps it blocked. So if you want to get past that, you have to start to perceive in the moment you experience something. So if I say to you, walk up, how many people have done this? How you doing? How are you doing? You're doing well. The typical response people say is, I'm doing fine. What does fine mean? That person can't tell you how they feel. Because they blocked the honesty to that answer. So basically what happens in the rational mind is we perceive. The mind goes through a series of steps and says, do I want to know this? No. Do I want to know? No, no. You get an answer way down that's safe. Okay? In order to get to intuition, you need to peel off layers and layers and layers and layers of dishonesty that you have developed over time. Now I call it the rational mind. It's not because it's rational. It's because it rationalizes everything. So if I have pain, my mind reacts to that pain. It tries to avoid it in the future. It becomes a non-conscious act. We don't think about it. We gravitate towards situations we like. We avoid situations we don't like. But we don't think about it. You walk in a room, you like somebody, right? That's a neat person. Why are they neat? That is decided by your thinking mind at the non-conscious level. Subconscious is what people use for that term. So honesty is really critical, and it can be developed. There's techniques to do that, and I'll get to that in a minute. The other part about it is that tangle in our minds, personal responsibility is critical. I don't know how many people here believe in reincarnation. Okay. The idea, whether you believe it or not, whether it's a fact or not, if you believe in it, the notion of reincarnation says that you're born into a set of circumstances that you can learn from. Okay? So you chose to be you, I chose to be me. So the choosing said that I'm going to live this life and learn these lessons. So I cannot make anybody else responsible for that choice. I chose my parents. My dad was a real prick. He was a smart guy, but there was a lot of stuff he didn't know. When I was a kid, I used to fight him like this all the time. He was a much bigger man too, so it wasn't easy to fight him. But I chose him. And I couldn't release the pain and the anger I had with my father until I recognized the fact and took responsibility for who I was. He wasn't responsible for my pain. I was. Another good example is if I walk up to somebody and say something and their feelings are hurt, right? Typical response is, you hurt my feelings, or you made me angry. That is nonsense. Nobody can make you angry. You allow ourselves to become angry. That person may have an issue with their mouth, but they're responsible for that part of it. We are responsible for our feelings. So that tangled web in our minds stays tangled as long as we're dishonest with ourselves and we refuse to accept responsibility for every single thing we experience. Nobody is responsible for us but us. You can't hurt my feelings. I can allow them to be hurt, but you can't do that to me. I will not give you that power. And furthermore, if I make you responsible for the feeling, I can never fix it. I don't own it. You do. So I'm stuck unless I learn to recognize that I must accept responsibility.